Hello. Welcome to In Pharma interview session. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Ihsane Mesrar, Associate Health Director of S&P Global Rating, Guillaume Benoit, Healthcare Director of S&P Global Rating, and Sudeep Kesh, Chief Innovation Officer, S&P Global. Today we will discuss the S&P Global's new report on AI in pharmaceutical industry, titled AI in Pharmaceutical Industry Promises Innovation and Speed and Saving. This is very interesting and important topic for the future of the AI in health ecosystem. You are welcome.
Thank you, Ihsane. Thank you for having us and for giving us the opportunity to talk about this important mega trend, which is AI in R&D pharma, and that's why also we kind of wrote this report.
We may start with some information about your background, your professional journey.
Sure. So I can start and then I let my colleagues do their introduction. So my name is Ihsane Mesrar. I'm an associate director in the healthcare consumer goods team within S&P Global Ratings division. I'm based in Paris, and in the scope of my work, I do have the primary analytical responsibility for many names in pharma. I can cite, for example, Roche. That led me to also cover other companies within the healthcare and the pharma supply chain, notably the contract development manufacturing organizations, so known as CDMOs, and for which I cover Lonza, for example. We also in the course of our work, we get to share our S&P views around specific companies' creditworthiness, but we also have the opportunity to have reports written around wider subjects in the industry. One of them is the one that we are going to talk about today, but definitely the idea of this article came from the conversations that we had with the companies that we cover in ratings, and we believe that AI is truly a mega trend within the R&D pharma process. And then I'll leave it maybe to Guillaume and Sudeep next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ihsane. Myself, Guillaume Benoit, also based in Paris, and I am a senior sector analyst within the team that assigns credit ratings to companies within the consumer good and healthcare industries. And within healthcare, we work also specifically with pharmaceutical companies. Myself, I work with Bayer and Novartis, for example. And something we've noticed in the various conversation we have with companies in recent years is that supply chain topics are becoming more and more important in our conversation and relevant to those companies. And we saw this mega trend, which is a greater adoption of artificial intelligence for companies to strengthen their supply chain, and we thought with Ihsane that it was a good idea to understand this megatrend better and also how it applies to credit ratings. So thank you very much for this opportunity to discuss this interesting topic, and I'm very looking forward to an interesting discussion.
And last and probably least, I'm Sudeep Kesh, Chief Innovation Officer for S&P Global Ratings. My journey in artificial intelligence actually started about 25 years ago. I was doing some research work with NASA to basically build these convolutional processing algorithms and stuff like that to be able to measure celestial objects in sort of a different way. And then that's what took me to S&P about 20 years ago, where I was taking some of the techniques and things like that and looking at doing research on education systems, and then ultimately credit markets, and then I ended up sort of leading the credit market research team. Right now, my team basically, we have a website that it's called spglobal.ai. And what we're doing is we're trying to basically differentiate the technology that powers artificial intelligence, the applications or different industrial applications, including pharmaceuticals, and then really enumerate the opportunities and the risks. So that website, it's all based on research. It's completely free. It's really important for us to sort of provide transparency about these different issues. And what we're hoping is that once we're able to enumerate these different opportunities and risks, we can have a much more mature dialogue about the governance implications, the risk mitigant strategies, and so on. Because I think a lot of people have a fear of artificial intelligence, and in some cases that's healthy. In some cases, some education may sort of curb that fear, but it's really important that we all talk about it. We all imagine the possibilities, because they are many and they're very, very deep. And as you said at the very introduction, this is a complete game changer for the pharmaceutical industry. So we're excited to kind of explore together.
So we may start with general overview of your reports that are really interesting and important key takeaway in your report. Can you provide a general overview of your report, AI in Pharmaceutical Industry Promises Innovation, and the key takeaway for the industry today?
Yes, sure. So, I mean, when the idea came for doing this article and starting our research around this subject, the aim was really to answer, let's say, many questions. But if we had to kind of summarize the three main ones that kind of articulate how the article and the report is written, the first one would be how AI has been used and is currently used within the R&D pharma process. So the idea was to revisit the actual applications, but also the upcoming ones. So we are giving a bit of history around the beginning of the applications with machine learning up until now with generative AI. The second question that we wanted to answer was how the pharma and R&D in pharma landscape is changing and is evolving. And this is where we looked at what was happening in terms of partnerships between big pharma and tech and biotech companies. And that was important for us to kind of understand this new kind of breed of AI biotech companies that rely solely on AI and especially generative AI to come up with the new molecules and to come up by the end of the day to come up with a new drug. And then finally, the third question was what were the key elements that readers, but also for us as analysts, to be aware of over the next years. And in that, we wanted to give a clear reading of what might actually happen in the next years from all the research that we did and all the things that we found interesting and included in the report. So that's for the questions that we wanted to answer. Then if we had to kind of summarize the key takeaways, first one is that Gen AI, generative AI, so I'm just going to say Gen AI is actually transforming the R&D in pharma. It's already happening, but it will be a bit more in the next years. We are seeing that the process of bringing a new drug to market and a new medicine to market will be shortened. And so it means that all this tedious process will have some, generative AI will have some repercussions on this process and will shorten some of the phases. The second one is around partnerships. Partnerships between players will be necessary for for having like a better R&D, let's say processes and R&D engines, but also for generative AI to have a key place within the R&D process. And then the third one is that AI will positively impact the pharma companies. Competitive, and it means for us that competitive advantage will be impacted through the use of AI. That means that, for example, companies who were early adopters of these technologies and didn't wait up until now or up until the next years to come into AI and use AI fully within the R&D process will kind of lose an edge in the coming years. And for us, early adopters will have this edge over other peers and other players. And that means that they have efficiencies in terms of R&D, but also efficiencies in manufacturing, and by the end of the day, being the first to market for many of the therapies and treatments.
And where do we currently stand in use of AI in pharmaceutical industry, and what are your projections for its impact over the next 5 or 10 years?
So our views, and if we start with maybe the uses of AI currently, so there are many uses, and we do kind of detail all of them throughout the report. But if we had to divide them into the largest buckets, the first one would be in the early development. And in the early development of a molecule or of a drug, generative AI or AI in general really helps kind of screen all the molecules individually, but also the interactions between molecules. And that is very important because it gives a better view on the safety profile of molecules, but also it helps leverage the existing data sets around molecules that already exist within big pharma companies, for example. So that can help through this screening and through this testing of interaction. This can help use an existing molecule into a new treatment or into a new drug, for example. And that means that sometimes for a new indication could be created for an existing product, and that also brings efficiencies. In the second part, and if we look throughout the phases of bringing a drug to market, the second one is around clinical trials. We do believe that it will help, and it's already happening. It's already helping in the selection of patients. So a better selection of patients mean that the clinical trials would be much more efficient, much more bring efficacy really to the trials, and by the end of the day to the treatment. But what it also means is that a better selection of patients would also diminish maybe the bias that could happen throughout these trials. So we believe that in clinical trials, there could be costs that should be saved, but also time. And that means also that patients would probably have a treatment a bit faster than they would without, for example, AI. And then the third, let's say, big usage of AI is around the market approval part. So in the chart, for example, that is shown, and it's around the regulatory submission and the pharmacovigilance documentation. This is something that has been happening already and is widely kind of known in the pharma industry, that big pharma are using and leveraging generative AI for the regulatory submissions. And it's because of the repetitiveness of the action that makes AI really super efficient and brings a lot of, let's say, economies into doing these tasks. But also for all the documentations for the medicines, there could be some leveraging of information, and all this repetitiveness and redundancies are diminished. But then this is what's happening now and might happen and is maybe already happening within pharma companies. But if we take a step forward into the future, we believe that the benefits of AI would not be immediate, so will definitely take time before we see very significant and immediate impact. We think it will be incremental, but it will also depend on the disclosures that are done by the players in the market. So here, what we would kind of be watching out for is that we would need a lot of, let's say, patience to see the results of everything that is already happening thanks to AI. And this is because there's a big number of programs, but most of them are very early stage and preclinical. So it will take time for us to see the results, the readouts throughout the clinical trials and up until the submission before we could say that AI is changing the game. The second one is scalability. So currently, AI and the use of AI is kind of focused on limited projects, for example, or on a specific disease. We believe that for AI to kind of, and for companies to grasp most of what AI has to offer, it has to be widened into a wider area of diseases, and that would really help into scaling the impacts of AI in pharma companies. The fourth one is around integration. So if generative AI and the algorithms are really part and of the R&D engine within companies, that would mean that they could really take the most out of what AI has to offer. And this is very important because it's only through combining what AI does plus all the proprietary systems that the companies already have that they would be able to get more efficiencies from AI. And finally, of course, and this is maybe one point that that might be not surprising, but that's still very significantly important, is around the expertise. So we don't think that AI is going to kind of eliminate the need for the research that is led by scientists, but it's going to go hand in hand. So we will see AI really helping scientists into their fundamental research projects, and we believe that the companies who know how to kind of combine AI experts with scientific expertise are the ones who are going to be the biggest winners from implementation of AI in the R&D in pharma.
And more broadly, I think what's going to largely be required for the future thinking of lots of different work, especially in the hard sciences, where when you're a kindergartner, if you're asked to close your eyes and then say, I want you to imagine this different system or process, if you ask a bunch of different kindergartners, you're going to get these wildly sort of different imaginative responses. And that's the beauty of what generative AI can allow you to do, is basically if you're truly imaginative, you could start to find patterns and things like that. So one thing that I think is particularly interesting is that a lot of the stuff in terms of the modalities that we see and know now with generative AI are text, and being able to take different sort of languages and extrapolate some meaning out of those kinds of things, taking some images and starting to find some patterns. Now imagine if you were then to to basically say instead of text and instead of images, let's look at the all of the elements, all of the molecules on Earth, right? And that becomes the modality by which we're operating with. Now imagine that that's not future tense; that's actually happening today. So that's why it's really so fundamentally different than anything we've sort of seen before, because of that imaginative process of saying, like, look, now we can see everything, and then start to imagine what's useful. Use the sort of economies of scale that Ihsane described to say, okay, well, there are actual sort of different segmentations for different therapies and so on. These exist. Right now, it's not economically feasible for us to do that because we didn't have the scale. Now you do. And that's why it's like if you get in the mindset of absolutely basically using different existing scientific processes and different governance and things in terms of different regulation that sort of goes through, all of those need to be adhered to. But this is sort of an entirely new skill set that just gets added to the corpus of scientific research.
So we may move to another important question. What are the trends in AI adoption within the pharmaceutical sector, and how do you see the markets evolving for especially AI application?
Especially when we look at the trends, what we can say is that we've seen the early adopters in terms of the technology. First of all, early adopters have been focusing on using machine learning systems, mostly developed by technology companies. And they are now more and more using generative artificial intelligence technology. And this they can apply to different way within the pharmaceutical company organization, which is on the one hand the discovery and development of new medicine. Another application is to generate efficiencies across the manufacturing processes or to ensure compliance with regulatory requirements. And then the third application would be to facilitate engagement with key stakeholders, including the regulators, the patient, and the healthcare professional. Now, what it means also for those pharmaceutical companies, in our view, it has the potential to accelerate drug discovery and potentially create a competitive advantage for those large pharmaceutical companies that have the financial resources to invest in artificial intelligence, and that could potentially lead to consolidation within the sector. And then I think a second consequence would be that resources could be deployed differently. When we talk about the cost savings that a pharmaceutical company could achieve, well, those could be redirected towards stepping up a pharmaceutical company's expertise within artificial intelligence, or could potentially be deployed to pursue projects in other areas. And then we also discussed the need for research and development scientists to acquire new skills. And what we could also see happening is a growing demand for artificial intelligence experts to join research and development functions.
Drug discovery is, as you mentioned, it's very expensive, time-consuming, and how do you see AI affecting this process? What are the expectations of the pharmaceutical companies and AI firms in terms of the cost and time reductions?
If we focus on the drug discovery side of the equation, and we estimate that the savings in terms of time and costs can come through different channels, different ways. It could be, for example, through a faster identification of new molecules, as research could potentially focus on the most promising candidates. It could be through a better forecasting in terms of safety and efficacy for medicines that are under development. It could suggest repurposing of existing medicine and the optimization of clinical trials, for example. Now, even if we consider that the time and cost savings will be difficult to assess, what we can state is that the cost reduction side could be material, because even in our view, a slight improvement in the success rate of research and development projects, or some small improvement in the speed and in the efficacy of the process could have an important impact. And the sort of data points that we found it actually comes from a consulting firm, McKinsey, which claims that artificial intelligence technology could reduce the cost of clinical trials by up to 50%, 50, to give you an idea of the potential. And if we now zoom onto the potential for time reduction, and I see you're showing this slide, which is very helpful, at the current status is that the drug development process takes on average 10 to 15 years. And that's all the way from the drug discovery through clinical development and then the marketing. And we estimate, you can see at the bottom line of this chart, that some of it could be compressed by artificial intelligence and by generative artificial intelligence. However, we need also to mitigate this and to acknowledge that it could also incentivize large pharmaceutical companies to pursue research for the treatment of more complex diseases. And what it means is that it could potentially require extended development timeline.
In your report, you mentioned large pharmaceutical companies are heavily investing in AI. How do you see this investment shaping the competitive landscape between the big pharma and smaller AI-driven biotech companies?
The current situation, and maybe Ihsane, you can elaborate on how the evolution of the competitive environment is shaping. What we notice today, what we see is that biotechs focus mostly on the discovery and the development of new medicine, and that's mostly because they do not have the scale and the relationship to, on the one hand, be involved in manufacturing activities, and on the other hand, to engage with stakeholders, which we've mentioned before, the regulators, the patients, and the healthcare professionals. And we also estimate that those artificial intelligence biotech, they often lack the investment resources to efficiently progress a treatment through the approval and then the marketing processes. Therefore, those biotechs often partner with pharmaceutical companies, which would focus on the manufacturing and the commercialization of new medicine. And we could see more and more partnerships between AI biotechs and big pharma in the future to work together on the development and manufacturing of new medicines.
Yeah, and so maybe to complement Guillaume's answer, if we look at the competitive landscape in pharma, and we take a look back into how it was led, or how it was really going. First one would be that we would see that prevalent drugs would only be launched by big pharma companies, and that biotechs would usually be either partners, but like kind of silent partners, where big pharma would bring the technology in-house and work on the projects only internally. Now what we're seeing is that biotechs are increasingly challenging this model, because they now independently work on programs and projects without reaching out to larger players at the early stages, of course. And within the biotechs, we also have to get an understanding of the AI biotechs, which is kind of, as I said, a different breed of biotechs, because with these ones, they rely solely on AI, and especially generative AI, to be able to come up with new molecules and with new designs of molecules. And that's very interesting, because if we look at one example in particular, the one around in silico medicine, which is working on various programs independently, but there's one that has been highly, let's say, discussed and talked about within the industry, and is about a novel drug for the treatment of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, so IPF, that has been solely designed thanks to AI, and is now had a positive readout in phase 2A. And so that means that they are almost at the middle of the road, let's say, before the next stages. And this example really demonstrates that a biotech can lead a project from end to finish, can do the clinical trials, but especially can leverage the knowledge that they have in AI. And this is something new. This is the first one. I don't think it will be the last one. I think there would be many, many examples in the future that we could discuss, and we could use as examples to demonstrate what has been just said. But definitely, if we look at how the pharma industry evolution is happening into, let's say, this new AI era, it's really also because there is an awareness within the industry that partnerships are also important. So at one side, we are seeing more and more independent projects, many of them early stage, led by biotechs. But on the other hand, we also see a lot of partnerships, a lot of multiplications of announcements coming from big pharma, from biotechs, working together on particular projects, or sometimes on particular phases of a project. So, and this is where we kind of have to be aware that the industry is also conscious that the advancement for to create new therapies, to create new molecules, and I mean, most importantly, to bring new drugs into patients is only gonna happen if there's cooperations between the two. And so at one hand, we can see big pharma providing the means, the capacity of production, the knowledge really to bring a drug into market, which means the commercialization, the distribution, the sales force also. That's very important. And in the other hand, we could see AI or let's say AI biotechs, or largely biotech companies, bring in the technology, the new program, really let's say it's almost they're bringing some creative side into the pharma industry, because they're bringing new combinations of molecular entities that were not possible before. And we really have to see the pharma industry evolving into that model, where partnerships are important, where partnerships are key to have an efficient, let's say, R&D process and R&D engines.
I don't see how it's feasible to do it any other way, frankly, because it's like you're going to have this there's going to be an increased specialization across a number of these processes. The data that you're both using for creating these new therapies and molecules and so on, but then also once your output becomes the input for sort of another process. So you have sort of an increasing level of specialization. And in order to really be effective, you're going to have to start partnering. So that, that's already begun, and that's part of the culture of some industries. But I think it's going to be a lot of industries are going to sort of adopt this sort of partnership mindset, which is not just, among corporations, by the way. It's also bringing in, government entities, nonprofits, and so on to basically, deal with these complexities as sort of a larger, organized unit of partnerships, not just doing it on an individual company basis.
You mentioned the partnership between the pharma and AI-driven companies. Could you elaborate on any successful collaboration, the current situation, and the future expectation in these partnerships?
Yeah, sure. So I think in what we try to kind of convey in the article, we give some examples. We kind of selected impactful announcements that have been made in the recent years between big pharma and let's say their AI biotech partners. We've seen them multiply. We do now see that there is a bit of thank you for showing the table, but we do see that there is most of these projects are really around early stage discovery of molecules, so around identification, development, or just a really discovery of a new entity. Being that these projects are very early stage, we don't have up until now, we don't have informations about which ones were successful and which ones were not, because of course, some projects could be just kind of dropped or could be stopped because they do not promise anything positive or positive results or readouts in the future. But I believe that now it's a bit early to say that that there's already let's say molecules that have been created through these partnerships, and it will also depend on how the big pharma and these AI companies want to communicate around these projects, because most of them being work in progress, it will really depend on the next phases. So especially the trials, the clinical trials before we know anything more. But I believe that up until now, it's just projects that are a work in progress, and in the future we'll know more. But definitely, we believe that there will be some exciting news for the industry, for the patients, and that these projects will yield some of them positive results, some of them will not. But it will really depend on how it will go in terms of the phases. And we have to kind of be aware that these projects, they are very important in terms of what they could create, the potentiality of what it could bring to the market. But keep in mind that generative AI is really helpful in kind of narrowing down also the number of molecules that should keep on going and that should go to the next stages. So it decreases the failure rates because of this knowledge, because of now we kind of can know even before we go to the development, we can know if a molecule is going to be a positive readout or not for some cases. But definitely something to watch out for and to kind of still follow in the coming months, and for some of them in the coming years.
I finished all my questions. This was really interesting data that you share with us. I don't know, do you want to add something else or underline any point in this interview?
I mean, maybe one last word from me would be that our aim was really to bring an article and, let's say, report that has many pages, but to bring more clarity around how AI is really playing out in the pharma R&D, let's say, space. And that's what we hoped it did. And we were very pleased, at least to be here and to get a chance to talk about the article live. And we urge people to go and try to read through and see how interesting this subject is, as we do think and we do believe it is.
Yeah, Ihsane, just on behalf of S&P Global Ratings, we just want to thank you because I think that programs like this and being able to kind of illustrate a lot of the the research that's happening, not just from S&P, but there's quite a lot of research that's happening all over the place on this topic, and it's just so important that people explore, read, discuss, have some quiet time, and then reflect on it, and then kind of imagine on what some of the path forward, regardless of what capacity or what industry you're working in. I think that these things, it's very, very complex stuff, and it requires a lot of thought. And we want to thank you for helping, facilitate, all of your audience to be able to really, have that thoughtful process.
This is the end of this interesting meeting. Thank you very much for sharing these insights and expertise with us. Thank you very much again to joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ihsane. Thank you very much.